Your Honor, the statements that form the basis of the pleas in this case are as follows. In the early morning hours of April 22nd, 2016, Pike County Dispatch received a 911 call from Bobby Joe Manley. Ms. Manley reported that she and others had made a very gruesome discovery, first at the house of Chris and Gary Rhoden, located at 4077 Union Hill Road in Piketon, Ohio, in Pike County, Ohio, and then at the home of Frankie Rhoden and Hanna Hazel Gilley at 4199 Union Hill Road, also in Piketon, Ohio, in Pike County, Ohio. All four of these individuals were found deceased. It was later determined that they had died from multiple gunshot wounds. A short time later, more victims were found. First, Dana Rhoden, Christopher Jr. Rhoden, and Hanna May Rhoden were discovered in their home at 3122 Union Hill Road, Piketon, Ohio, in Pike County, Ohio, also deceased from multiple gunshot wounds. Later in the day, an eighth and final victim, Kenneth Rhoden, was found in his home located at 1084 Left Fork Road in Rhoden, Ohio, also in Pike County, Ohio. The Pike County Sheriff's Office quickly called BCI in to investigate, and it became apparent pretty early on that whoever committed these crimes likely knew the Rhoden, Manley, and Gilley family, and also that weapons with silencers had likely been used, as some of the victims had been killed while they were sleeping within close proximity of one another without waking. Additionally, Your Honor, the investigation showed whoever committed the crimes removed the phones of most of the victims along with trail cams and a DVR located at the victims' residences. Ultimately, the investigation led investigators to consider the Wagner family of Edward Jake Wagner, George Wagner IV, and their parents, Angela and George Billy Wagner, as potential suspects. As the investigation progressed, investigators found shell casings at the Wagner's residence on Peterson Road that matched some of the shell casings that had been left behind at some of the crime scenes. Investigators also found receipts and video evidence of the Wagners making purchases of shoes during the same month of the homicides that matched identically the shoe tread marks left in blood at one of the scenes, both in sizes and in style. Ultimately, agents interviewed the Wagners at the Canadian-U.S. border where more evidence was confiscated, including a laptop. Investigators also confiscated some of the Wagners' phones and obtained and reviewed financial documents and accounts belonging to the Wagners. In the course of the investigation, investigators also found that the Wagners were purchasing many items in preparation for these homicides in the 2 to 3 months leading up to the homicides. Items such as brass catchers, ammunition, magazines and clips, a phone jammer, and ultimately items for building silencers for different caliber weapons. Investigators also found screenshots on the laptop that was confiscated in Montana that revealed that the Wagners were, quote, hacking into Facebook accounts of at least 2 individuals by accessing their accounts without permission. One of the screenshots taken revealed that there was a growing dispute between Jake Wagner and Hanna May Rhoden over their then 2-year-old daughter. Jake and Hanna began dating when Hanna was very young, only 13 years old. She conceived their daughter when she was age 15 and Jake was age 20. Eventually, she began seeing someone else and became pregnant with that person's child. Jake grew to be upset with Hanna over the fact that Hanna was exposing Sophia to people that he believed were not, that she should not be around. In the meantime, Jake was pushing Hanna to go to court and sign documents regarding custody of their shared child. Hanna resisted that idea. In December of 2015, sent a message to another individual and told that person that she would, quote, never sign papers ever, they will have to tell me first. That message was seen first by Angela Wagner, who took a screenshot of it, and later it was shown to Jake. As it turns out, the Facebook page of the other person that Hanna was talking to at that time was one of the 2 that we know the Wagners were monitoring. 2 months later, investigators saw evidence of the Wagners beginning to prepare for these homicides, and 4 months after Hanna Rhoden sent that message, she and 7 members of her family were dead. Other evidence investigators found revealed that Jake, George, and Angela Wagner had executed custody documents that designated Jake and Hanna's daughter would go to Jake if Hanna were to die. They also executed documents saying that Jake and Hanna's daughter and that George's son would both go to Angela if Jake or George also met an early demise. These forms were printed off the Wagner computer on April 3rd of 2016, less than 3 weeks prior to the homicides. but they were filled in to appear as if they had been executed 1 and 1.5 years prior to that. One of them bore the purported signature of Hanna Rhoden, and all of them bore what purported to be the notarization of Rita Newcomb, which is Angela Wagner's mother. Those documents were submitted to the lab at BCI, and they determined that Hanna May probably did not sign that form, and that signature purporting to be Rita's was also probably not signed by her. And that is just kind of one of their designations, Your Honor. Since that time, we have learned from Ms. Newcomb that in fact she did not sign or notarize any of those documents, and that she believed that her daughter, Angela Wagner, had. She also indicated that Angela Wagner had asked her to lie to the authorities and say that Rita had in fact notarized the 3 documents in question. Ultimately, Ms. Newcomb did not feel that she could or should continue to lie for her daughter, and she sat down with us and told us the truth. We have also now learned unequivocally that Hanna Rhoden also did not sign the form that purported to be signed by her either. Instead, one of the Wagners forged her name at the same time that Rita Newcomb's signature was forged. Just before the indictment in this case, Your Honor, in November of 2018, investigators found the burnt-up remains of a silencer from the Wagner's property at Peterson Road. It appeared to be a prototype that had failed. We have since learned that that is in fact true. Most recently, Your Honor, the state sat down with Jake Wagner, who has provided the state many more details regarding his offenses, some of which were very consistent with what the state already knew and with the evidence that had already been collected. Some of the information, however, that was provided by Jake was new. In addition to the information that Jake provided us, what he told us led us to discover some evidence that had yet to be recovered, specifically the weapons that were used in these offenses, along with vehicles that were used during these offenses, including one that was bought specifically to use the night of the homicides only. The information that Jake provided clearly implicated he and each members of his family, to include Billy, Angela, and George Wagner, as being guilty of all the counts contained in the indictments filed in this matter. Based on the totality of the information now known by the state, including the forthright statements of the defendant, we have overwhelming evidence that the defendant and the 3 co-defendant members of his family are in fact responsible for planning and carrying out the homicides of Chris Rhoden, Gary Rhoden, Frankie Rhoden, Hanna Hazel Gilley, Dana Rhoden, Hanna May Rhoden, Christopher Jr., and Rhoden, and Kenneth Rhoden, which all occurred on or about April 22nd of 2016. Offenses to which the defendant now admits. Jake admitted that in the late evening hours of April 21st, 2016, into the early morning hours of April 22nd, 2016, is when they committed these homicides. We know that they trespassed into each of the 4 residences where the victims were found with the intent to kill them, and that they were armed with firearms, at least 2 of which had homemade silencers affixed to them when they did so. We know that they conspired together and planned these homicides for the months that led up to the offenses, and that all 4 co-defendants took part in that, as well as making various purchases to accomplish their goal. We know that they removed the phones of all but 2 of the victims, and cameras and other surveillance equipment of the victims in order to avoid detection. Additionally, we know that they destroyed those items, along with trying to destroy and discard in a concealed manner the silencer prototype, along with all the other evidence in this case, including the weapons, ammunition, and other incriminating items. We know that they forged documents to make them appear to be genuine, and that they asked others to lie to cover up this particular crime. We know that they hacked into the Facebook accounts of at least 2 individuals, and that allowed them access to information that ultimately became the motive for these crimes. We know that the defendant engaged in a pattern of corrupt activity by acting as part of a criminal enterprise with the members of his immediate and some extended family members while acting individually, or while being aided and abetted by the other members of this, quote, criminal enterprise, in committing the offenses of aggravated murder, aggravated burglary, and other offenses contained in the indictment. At this point, as noted, Your Honor, the defendant has in essence confessed and apologized for committing these offenses with his family members, and admits to personally causing the death of 5 of the 8 victims, and either committing all of the other offenses contained in the indictment directly or by being complicit in them. We appreciate his admissions and his motive for doing so. I would note, lastly, Your Honor, for the record, that all these offenses occurred in Pike County, Ohio, or if they occurred in another county, they were committed as a part of a continuing course of conduct such that venue is properly placed in Pike County pursuant to 2901.12 of the Ohio Vice Code.
Mr. Meyer,